We're here today set for our final. We're conducting this through Zoom under finding of good cause and agreement of the parties. And we are live streaming, and Ms. Goodman is making our record. Okay, we'll take announcements.
Daniel Trout for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. We're present, ready, Your Honor.
Jeff Hill,
Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff Hill on behalf of Rochelle Long. Judge, she is in the Randall County Jail. I have been in contact with her. She knows that this hearing is taking place today, and she's okay with us proceeding in her absence. So I'm ready.
Vince Nowak on behalf of Danny Tidwell, and subject to my motion to extend, we are both present and ready, Judge.
Stacy Zabala on behalf of Liam.
All right, thank you. All right, then, Mr. Nowak, if you want to make your motion.
Yes, Judge, I filed this on March 7th of this year, and I guess my reasons are straightforward. Number one, Mr. Tidwell is the non-offending parent. Number two, notwithstanding that he's the non-offending parent, the state requires him to work certain services. Number three, the same state that requires him to work services denies him those services while he's incarcerated. And in addition, I would point to the court my March 25th, 2024 filing of Mr. Tidwell's self-study, which is quite extensive. Mr. Tidwell tells me that he will likely be out of prison within 3 months. He's got a job lined up. He's got a house lined up, and he is willing to work services and get after it really, really hard the minute he gets out. Given the child's age, the child turned 4 yesterday, and I know this argument goes both ways, Judge, but I don't think it would work a disservice to the child to give Mr. Tidwell that 6-month extension and allow the non-offending parent that he is to complete services once he gets out. That's my motion, Judge. Thank you.
Judge,
Okay.
if I might be heard on that as well, I'd request time.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Hill, I think I talked over you. What?
I apologize. I was just requesting a minute to make an argument on that motion as well, unless you had your mind made up in the affirmative.
No, Amy, I'll hear you.
Judge, my client is requesting that motion be granted as well. She's in favor of that, and it would benefit her as well, as she just completed inpatient rehab. So she's definitely in favor of that motion and would like to see this case extended.
Why is she in jail?
She is in jail on warrants, on old stuff, nothing new. She got out of rehab and realized that she needed to make life changes, or sometime during rehab, she decided that she needed to turn her life around, and so she got out and she turned herself in and wants to take care of her warrants and get her life cleaned up. But she's also in a position to where she can bond out if the court is of a mind to extend the case. She has the ability to bond out and continue to finish working her services and continue on with outpatient rehab.
What are the charges?
Judge, I apologize. I don't know.
I can tell you, Judge, she has a possession of controlled substance out of Gray County and has a bond forfeiture and an unauthorized use of a motor vehicle out of Potter County. She also has a drug paraphernalia possession charge out of Randall County at Class C, but the Randall and the Gray County, or the Potter and the Gray County, are both felony charged.
Well, Mr. Nowak, when you urged this motion at our prior hearing, yeah, I certainly had one significant question, whether or not the client's registration is a sentence precluding him from having contact with his own child. Do you have the answer to that?
Judge, you're kind of low volume. I don't.
Okay. I said when you urged your motion at our last hearing, I had one significant question, which was, would your client's registration as a offender prevent him from having contact with his own child?
No, in the state of Texas, there's no specific statute that prohibits a sex offender from getting custody of his own child. It's basically up to the discretion of the court, which would be up to your discretion. It's kind of tough to make, listen, my guy's a registered sex offender. I get it. He's sitting in prison right now. I get that. It's difficult to make the argument, given those circumstances, that he could be a good parent and complete services. And at some point, you would allow him some sort of access to his child. However, there is no specific statute in the state of Texas that says a sex offender cannot have possession of his own child or custody of his own child.
Well, I understand that, but my question is was that addressed in his sentencing? And you know, what are his actual restrictions?
His actual restrictions moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, that would have been addressed by the court that sentenced him.
Oh, he's got to register and he's got to stay away from kids. However, in the state of Texas, there's no specific statute when it's your own child that you can't get custody of your own child, even if you're on the registry.
There may not be a statute to that effect, but I think the court could impose that restriction. Be specific about it in sentencing. I mean, if it says he is required to register and he cannot have any contact with any child under a certain age, or you know, I guess that's what I'm asking. What did his sentence say?
Mr. Tidwell, you're raising your hand. Do you have an answer to that?
Yes, I do not have.
Well, hang on. We got to make sure the judge allows you to speak. Judge, can Mr. Tidwell?
He can give me an answer, but the bottom line is I want to know what the sentencing. What is the conviction say? Because I can't override that.
Is it a Potter or Randall County conviction?
Wise County.
Oh.
Has anybody seen that?
Judge, I have all the paperwork they sent me from Wise County. I have not seen a specific decree that he can't. I'm looking back through it again to make sure I didn't miss it, but I'm not seeing that it says he cannot have access to his own child on the paperwork.
I took a look at what Daniel said.
Okay, everyone's missing my point, I think. Does it say he can have no contact with a child under a certain age, whether it's his or it's somebody else's? If it says no child, that means no child.
Let me see, Your Honor.
And we come back to the fact that it is also an enumerated ground for termination of rights. As to this child, even though this child was not the victim of that crime, but it's still the grounds. And if it says no contact with any child under a certain age, then that includes his own.
I'm looking at the same stuff Daniel's looking at right now, Judge. I'm certainly not ignoring the court's question.
No, and I mean, I'm assuming that Mr. Sharp's going to offer those exhibits, but they haven't been offered yet, so I'm not considering them yet. I mean, other than if I think it's relevant to your request for a continuance of today's setting. Mr. Hill, your client, I mean, from the permanency report, while y'all are looking at that, indicates that your client did successfully complete rehab, correct?
That's what she tells me, ma'am.
And that's what was in the report, so I assume that St. Francis is verified.
Judge, it's Jody. Could you maybe mute the Robertson unit? I think that's why we're having a little bit of feedback.
Sure. Okay, well, I'm going to mute. Just put your device on mute. But if you need to speak, raise your hand. Get our attention.
Thank you. That's much better.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, Jody.
That's okay.
Well, I tell you what. This may be academic today, but this may be an issue for a later time.
I'm not seeing it in there, Daniel. Are you?
I'm not. I've got to go pull, and I've pulled it before. I just can't remember exactly what it says under Chapter 62 of the Criminal Code, because that's what his admonishments go to, and if it's written in there, what the guidelines are under that registration.
Well, I think here's the answer. You all are going to have time to look into that. I think that Mr. Hill's request for an extension has to be entertained by the court by statute. She's completed drug rehabilitation. She completed that successfully. It's the basis for extraordinary circumstances to extend the case. I know not a lot else has really happened, but obviously that's one of the most important underlying issues in the case. So,
Judge, may I make an argument on some of that real quick?
yeah, you can. I just, I know the statute says what it says.
As to, I know we're looking at, as far as Mr. Nowak's client, case law I've seen on extraordinary circumstances when somebody's incarcerated as far as failure to work services. The incarceration is deemed their own fault. And so unless there is a different argument, just purely incarceration not being able to work services is not grounds for extraordinary circumstances.
I would agree.
And being that it is what he's incarcerated for is a, as you pointed out, an enumerated offense for grounds for termination. That is what I would argue, you know, regardless of whether he can have his child if he's a registered sex offender, I don't think the grounds are there for the extraordinary circumstances as to Mr. Nowak's client. As to Mr. Hill's client, mom did go into rehab, as my understanding. I believe she completed rehab around May 29th, I believe it was. I believe she's had a positive drug screen since then. And she has not started or begin to start any outpatient treatment, which was also recommended as part of her OSAR originally, that she go to rehab and inpatient and outpatient. So she did do the rehab, but she has not done anything since. She did turn herself in, so she is incarcerated for the last 5 days, and I believe she turned herself in on the 13th. But in that meantime of getting out of rehab and turning herself into jail, she did not proceed to any outpatient treatments. She just simply did the inpatient and moved on. I don't know if if she's planning on doing the outpatient, but that has not been seen so far. And as I said, I believe she did test positive on a drug screen a couple of weeks after getting out.
Judge, my client tells me that the positive drug test stemmed, and it's by, I believe I saw it, I believe it was a very low level of marijuana. She says it stems from CBD products to help her sleep.
Mr. Trout, would you concur it was just marijuana?
It was just marijuana, Your Honor. It was also about 9 days after she got out of rehab. I don't know if she's conferred with the worker on that as far as if she's using CBD products, but I have no knowledge of that. I just know that she was positive for marijuana about 9 days after she got out of rehab. I don't know what Centercorp does. I don't know that if they let you use those type of products while you're in rehab. But if not, then that means she started using them after she got out of the rehab, if that's what it actually was.
Would you agree that it was at a very low level?
Screen hits at 1, it was at a 3.
Well, that's true, but that was the hair, so that's probably not the most relevant one. But that is accurate. The UA from June 7th, which is the same date as the hair, she screened at a 39.
39 confirms at 15 and screened at a 39.
And I don't understand exactly. It says screen of 50, confirm at 15, and level of 39. So I don't really understand how the 39 fits in between a 15 and a 50.
Okay, well.
And Judge, I've got information. She didn't actually turn herself in. They went and picked her up.
Your Honor, for the record, I would join in the arguments against the extension. And I understand that Mr. Nowak has described his client as the non-offending parent, but it is his voluntary act that has prohibited him from taking care of his own child.
Yeah, I'm that's not lost on the court, and I, that would not be the way I would describe him, as a non-offending parent, but I'm not his lawyer either. Okay, folks, here's where I think this comes down. my concern is time. If we push forward today, I've got a case set at 1 o'clock. I've got an adversary hearing set in another county at 1 o'clock today. This is having all the appearance to me of something that's going to take us a number of hours to try. The biggest problem is the dismissal date is July 1st. And I don't know whether there's any possible way we can get a date between now and that day I think the answer to that is it's going to be impossible. But, it very much sounds to me like we're going to have a contested final hearing. And, it's 12:45 right now. So
And,
I think we're going to have to find a different date. So
and Judge, I would ask instead of an extension, I would ask for a call and recess on
I
this.
understand. I know you're headed there. I get
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
So I just want to validate with Ms. Katie. I'm correct. There's no possible way of getting a full day or a half a day or something like that before the 1st, is there?
And
she's very busy right now with the tech people, so I don't know whether she's even sitting where she can hear me.
and
Let me
Yeah,
just,
I'm looking.
okay.
And Judge, one other thing on it, and I know it was discussed in the last hearing, so the court is aware of it. Mr. Hill's client also has signed a relinquishment that is in my possession. I didn't file it because I agreed when this got pushed last time that we would hold on to it to see how things went. But that is also a factor there, is his client also has signed a voluntary relinquishment.
Right, I'm aware of that too, yeah. I'm waiting for Ms. Katie. I just want to see what options we've got. Yeah, Mr. Hill, I mean, I'm very concerned with the 2 charges that your client has, or 3, one being a misdemeanor, but the other 2 being felonies. And I don't know off the top of my head what her prior criminal history is, but she could be looking at some significant amount of time to do. State's got to prove their case. I mean, she's not been pronounced guilty yet. So, but that is cause for concern that she's got that looming on the horizon.
Judge, we've got several days with several finals coming up.
Yeah.
Absolutely do not have time before the 1st.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, we don't have any time at all because we've got days when we don't have reporters as well because of vacations.
And Judge, I just say, as far as the 1st, I think I'm set for me and Ms. Zavala are both set for mediation in the morning and in the afternoon. So we have 2 different mediations set on the 1st.
Okay. Ms. Katie, what's the first thing that we could possibly reset this?
You need several hours.
I'd say a half a day for sure.
Yeah, if they're willing to let a visiting judge hear it, we have the 16th and the 18th all day of July. Sorry, July. We've got a couple days that Ms. Zavala is out. They've got advanced family law coming up. Let's see, maybe we could potentially do the afternoon of July the 9th. You've got 3 finals that morning, and I don't know how long those ones are going to take.
That's not sounding real promising. Okay,
No.
so Judge Board will be sitting for me on the 16th and the 18th.
Yes.
And he could give you, I mean, right now he doesn't really have any settings. So, I mean, you could have the entire day on one of those 2 days.
Judge, I don't have a problem with a visiting judge if nobody else does.
No objection.
No objection at all, Judge.
I
Okay.
have no objection to a visiting judge. I was just having some calendaring issues and I can't remember. I know we've got 2 jury trial settings coming up, but I think it's August.
Those are August and September.
Okay, I just couldn't get my calendar to come up, but I think that should be fine from my end.
So, all right. Anybody have a preference of which of those 2 days? And I assume, Rachel, we will have Ms. Taylor available.
I haven't confirmed with her because I haven't sent out July dates, but I will confirm with her.
Okay.
And I think she's out on vacation right now. So I don't know if I'll get a response today. But I'll send her both of these.
All right. So what I'm going to do today is I understand it's over objection. but to give Judge Ward the final discretion about this, come July, whichever day we're going to do, 16th or 18th. I'm going to go ahead and grant the extension in the case, and, you know, he can entertain any further argument about, pushing the final out based on what's going on at that moment. But the extension, I'll be clear on the record, is because mom completed inpatient drug treatment. And I think it's a basis to find an extraordinary circumstance. I mean, Jeff, I think you got to stress to her, boy, her drug test better be clean
Yes, ma'am.
between now and then. And, you know, we're not going to try the case twice, so Mr. Tidwell just catches that break. But I'll make it clear the extraordinary circumstances fall on the fact that mother did complete inpatient treatment. And so, which day are we going to set it?
Either day works for me.
Either one's fine with me, Judge.
Well, why don't we set it? Is that the first one's a Tuesday?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, let's set it that day. So why don't we go ahead and do a review hearing? Just to, let me see, when was our last one?
I think we did a one in,
April, maybe? Did we do one then?
let me see.
I saw the last one was April 16th.
Yeah, that was when we were originally set for trial, and
Mhm.
anyway, how we got here. So
This one.
I think we're okay to July 16th, but
Well, I show 120 days from April 16th is August the 14th.
Yeah, as I said, I think we got till August on that, Judge.
all right. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, the way I see this, I mean, there's just a lot of kind of balls in the air right now. I mean, mom may or may not bond out. I mean, we don't know that. She may be sitting right where she's at on July 16th. And so, you know, in fairness to, like I said, since Judge Board's the one that's going to be hearing this, I'm putting it in his hands, so I'm going to, you know, leave that in his discretion.
Judge, if I might, you leave to his discretion whether he wants to have the final that day or move it to a different day, or what are you going to leave to his discretion?
I mean, if you all, you know, are arguing on July 16th I've extended the case, so we're going to have a new dismissal date 6 months from now. If he hears argument and thinks that it's in the best interest of the child to push the final out even further, that's I'm leaving that to his discretion, which is partially why I'm granted the extension as opposed to calling the case and recessing. So, okay, then, he'll see you guys July 16th. For an adversary hearing, we are conducting this through Zoom under a finding of good cause and agreement of the parties. We're live streaming, and as stated, I'm recording to the Zoom cloud since I don't have a reporter. Okay, we'll go ahead and take announcements.
Pamela Ferguson, Regional Attorney representing the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. I'm present and ready with investigator Veronica Nieto, who also goes by Anna V. Nieto, and supervisor Natalie Thacker from the department. And I'm also present and ready with Renasia Perez, permanency specialist, and supervisor Jasmine DeVreau from St. Francis Ministries.
Bailey Sapien on behalf of Mom Hannah Mason. My client is present and we're ready to proceed.
Brooks Barfield, attorney for Andrew Adcock, present and ready.
Stacy Grant, attorney ad litem for the children. I'm present and ready.
Savannah Kincaid, I represent Mr. Benson. I've had no contact with him, but I'm present and ready.
All right, so Mr. Barfield, that's your client on camera under.
That is correct, Your Honor. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Ms. Ferguson, we have any agreements today, or are we calling our first witness?
We're calling our first witness, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Who's going to be on the hot seat first?
Your Honor, the department calls Anthony Adcock. And are you the father of Sandra and Jonathan?
Yes, ma'am.
You are appearing here today under a different name. Can you tell us what name you were labeled under?
It's probably because my Gmail was hooked up with Zoom. But my real name's Andrew Adcock. The name that it's under should be Druniverse Productions. It's probably under, yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
It's just my music group, my music production group. Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall being involved in with the department in the past?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, last August, you were involved with the department. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
At that time, why did the department become involved with your family's life?
It was failure to, or it was neglect of children. Our pediatrician had called for us.
And did you work any services to resolve those underlying issues?
Yes, ma'am. Did parenting classes. Also did a little bit of rehab, and then, yes, ma'am.
So you say you did rehab. Rehab for what?
Rehab for my drug usage.
And what was your drug of choice?
Methamphetamines, ma'am.
And how many days did you attend rehab?
I attended at least four days, and I think we had court right after that.
And did you tell the department at that time that you weren't going to finish rehab?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this question as being collateral evidence in this particular matter. I believe this is a new proceeding. That other proceeding was closed. So I believe this has already been litigated and determined. So I'm going to object as collateral evidence.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
The Family Code allows all evidence of a pattern of behavior to be presented to the court. We believe that all of the evidence in the last case, which was less than a year ago, should be considered by the court as a pattern of behavior because it goes to the very heart of the endangerment of the children that we are trying to prove up today.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection, and as well, I'm presented with the parents' history with the department at the time the affidavit is presented to me for consideration of removal, and obviously prior history with the department is always relevant. All right, you can proceed.
So, Mr. Adcock, when the case that you had previously closed, and that was a family-based safety services Texas Family First case, wasn't that?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your understanding of that type of case?
It was basically just to get us to a better place with our kids. I kind of used it as resources and things to learn, how to be a better parent, and also to kind of help me, just in case I relapse or anything like that. I just used it to the advantage instead of looked at it in a negative way. So I just used it to the best I could.
And when that case closed, were you still using methamphetamines?
No, ma'am.
Did you tell the department when that case closed that you were still using and that you weren't going to stop?
No, ma'am.
Are you willing to take a drug test today?
Yes, ma'am.
And you believe that you'll be clean?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you provide a drug test to Hannah Mason during this investigation?
Yes, ma'am. And I had failed for marijuana. Not during this investigation. It was after we had closed it on everything.
When exactly did you provide a drug test to her?
I really don't know, ma'am. It was probably like maybe a few weeks after we got off the case. And she just wanted to be sure I was clean if I was going to be allowed around my kids. So she was just taking the measures that she needed to.
And your drug test was positive?
For marijuana, yes, ma'am.
When you worked services before, what did you learn about children being exposed to drugs?
It's not healthy for them at all. I mean, it can cause all type of health problems. It can cause, also too, if we get too lost on drugs or anything, we can also neglect our children through those times. I mean, there's pretty much anything possible within those things.
And is that what was happening last August when your pediatrician was concerned?
No, ma'am.
So the fact that you were using drugs had nothing to do with the initial reason the department came into your life last August?
No, ma'am, but I also needed that little wake-up call. So, I mean, I'm gonna say no, it had nothing to do with the case, but it had a lot to do with my own awakening,
Well, you called it a wake-up call, but why are we here today then?
I guess because we had allegations against us that we relapsed.
And were you asked to take a drug test during the investigation?
She asked for a mouth swab. Yes, ma'am.
And did you refuse?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand why the department would be concerned with the way that your case closed before, with the fact that Hannah had to provide you with a drug test.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand the concerns?
Yes, ma'am.
And so it's been about 3 weeks, hasn't it, since you were asked to take a drug test? Why haven't you taken one in 3 weeks?
I'm waiting for them to request the drug test out of me.
Do you have a Facebook page where you go by Andrew Vasquez?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you been posting on that public page some videos of yourself?
Not frequently. Just some videos where I really don't know, ma'am. I mean, what are we talking about as far as posting?
Well, it's fair to say you've been mad at the department in the last week. Is that correct?
I've been more mad at myself than anything.
Didn't you say on your Facebook page whether or not we were using drugs, those children were cared for?
That just had to do for prior case. I mean, that's had to do for, when we first got on CPS.
Well, who's we that you're referring to?
I'm just referring to myself, ma'am. It's just kind of just me talking on Facebook, me venting in a way. So.
Didn't you say whether or not I relapse, whether or not I've not?
It was just me trying to prove the point that I was a good father regardless. But, through all I've learned through all these services and everything, I know that that's not good for the kids. So.
Well, that was last week. Is that correct?
Last week.
That you posted that live on Facebook?
No, that's probably maybe been a few weeks back or so. I'm not too sure.
So even after doing all the services that you were asked to do in the last case, you still don't believe that drug use can impact your children?
Oh, yes, I believe it can. Yes, ma'am. I sure do. That was just kind of me just being in an emotional state of mind and kind of confused with a lot of things.
And you did also.
Yes,
go ahead.
Well, go ahead, ma'am.
You did also say some concerning things, such as you were thinking about hurting yourself, or things would be better if you weren't here. Are you okay?
Yes, ma'am. I sure am. It was just in the moment feeling, you know what I mean? When you first lose your kids, I mean, what parent wouldn't feel that way?
Do you have a counselor?
No, ma'am. But I'll always be open to a counselor if I need one.
So if this court were to order you to work services, you would be open to going to see a counselor?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you first move back in with your children after the previous case closed in April?
Probably maybe 2.5 to 3 weeks, maybe, I think. Not too sure.
And did you ever admit to Hannah that you were using drugs?
I admitted to hitting the vapes of marijuana. Yes, ma'am. And that's when she had removed me for the house, until I got cleaner. So.
Do you believe that you need to go back to rehab?
If it's needed, if it's required, yes, ma'am, I will.
Do you think your children deserve that?
Hang on, Ms. Ferguson, let me back up. That didn't answer her question. So her question was, do you think you need to go to rehab?
No, ma'am. I think I just need to get my stuff together and start getting working on getting a job and start thinking of how I'm going to be able to support my kids if we do get them back or anything. But if it's needed for services, I will do them.
All right, Ms. Ferguson, go ahead.
Mr. Adcock, you were ordered in the last case to address drug use. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you successfully address it then?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think this is successful?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, all I was doing was getting over-the-counter vapes. I mean, that's pretty much all. I guess that's a concern to my children.
Do you understand how even marijuana could affect your children?
Yes, ma'am. You could not pay attention to some things. You could neglect. There's a lot of things that could happen. I mean, I guess just for the fact that they were over the counter was the reason why I, didn't really have it in my mind that it was bad. But I mean, it's all around bad. So.
Would you be surprised if Hannah Mason had told the department last week that you tested positive for meth?
Yes,
speculation.
No.
I think he already answered, so I'm fine.
I mean, I'm going to overrule.
Okay.
Asked him if he would be surprised. But.
Okay. Yeah, I'll withdraw my objection. It was a bad objection.
Would you be surprised?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you take a drug test for Hannah last week or the week before?
No, ma'am.
In the last case, the safety monitor was the children's grandfather. What's his name?
Wesley Mason.
Okay. Do you believe that he was an appropriate caregiver for your children?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any concerns with his household?
No, ma'am.
Do you believe that there's anybody who lived in his household that was using methamphetamines?
No, ma'am.
What steps did you take to make sure that nobody in his household was using methamphetamines when your children were there?
My children were always with me when we was over there. We just had family time and we just, played games, play Fortnite, stuff like that. So, I mean, there really wasn't any type of space for any type of illegal activity or anything. All we did was just enjoy family time while we had it.
Your children are 5, 4, 3, and 1. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think Fortnite is an appropriate activity for family night?
I mean, I would think so, as long as I'm monitoring everything that's going on. And I mean, really, my son's just sitting back watching me play. So, and it's not really the shooting part; it's just the building, the building parts. So.
Do you understand that if you'd taken a drug test and were clean, we wouldn't be here today?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you understand that it's a concern when law enforcement came to your place that you didn't cooperate with them either?
I didn't have law enforcement come up to me. Supposedly when they came to the house, I was out of town because my cousin had passed away, so I wasn't in town at the time.
Do you understand why the department would have a concern about your ability to cooperate in anything other than a TMC case where the department has custody?
I'm sorry, what was that, ma'am?
Do you understand why the department would have a concern about your ability to cooperate and keep your children safe and follow a safety plan when you haven't done so in the last 3 weeks?
And how is that?
Well, when the department asked you to take a drug test, what did you say?
I turned it down. I mean, because we had already dealt with a case and plus the judge had ruled it for my wife and or my girlfriend and her dad to see over it all. So I felt like it was in their hands. So.
And who is Wesley Mason married to?
Larissa.
Have you ever used drugs with her?
No, ma'am.
Does she live with Wesley right now?
I do not know, ma'am.
Did she live there last week?
I do not know, ma'am.
Ms. Ferguson, you can continue. I just need to step away to get something, but I'm
okay.
I'm hearing. So
okay. Thank you, Your Honor. What do you do for employment?
I weed eat and mow yards and stuff, ma'am. I help my friend mow yards here around town.
What's your friend's name?
Adrian Ramirez.
How often do you do that?
At least every three days.
And how much do you make a week?
I usually get paid $10 an hour, so it just depends on the hours that I put in. So average for those 3 days, probably at least 175, maybe 175 for those 3 days, ma'am. He gets paid by the job, but he pays me hourly.
When was the last time you had a full-time job?
It had to have been when I worked for Texas Crushers. I was a welder, and that had to have been at least maybe a year and a half, maybe a year and a half.
How do you support your children?
How to support my children, as far as money wise?
Yes.
Well, my girlfriend, she was working and I was at the house with the kids. We kind of would take turn every year. She'd work and then I would work. So we kind of just rotated.
So you were caring for the children alone?
Yes.
In the last 2 months?
No, not in the last 2 months. No, ma'am.
Well, when were you talking about?
I'm just talking about whenever we really weren't on this CPS stuff or anything. I mean, it's just kind of just been since we've been together.
Who cares for your children while Miss Mason is at work in the last 2 months?
In the last 2 months, man, so much has happened, man. I didn't really think the last 2 months. I mean, so much has happened all at once. So, and if anything, as far as exact timing out, it's just, you know, my nerves a little bit high and stuff like that, a little anxious and stuff, and just trying to think of everything will kind of clutter mine just a little bit, man. So excuse me.
Well, is it fair to say that you have been alone with your children in the last 2 months since you moved back in?
I would imagine so. I mean, most of the time.
I'm going to object to the witness, Hannah Mason, shaking her head.
Yeah, Ms. Mason, you don't need to comment on anything, whether it's verbal or body language.
Okay. So Hannah shaking her head, was she telling you to say no, that you haven't been alone with the children?
Objection, speculation.
I'll sustain that.
Mr. Adcock, do you believe that you need services to also address the fact that you've been making statements like things would be better if I wasn't here?
I can always use the help. Yes, ma'am. I mean, I could always learn something. You can always learn something new out of these things. So, you know.
And you say that, but the department was willing to pay for you to go to rehab all the way through from beginning to end during the last case, and you went for 4 days. Why did you leave?
I missed my daughter. That's what it was. I missed my kids. So.
Isn't it true that you only had supervised visitation with your children?
No, ma'am.
During the last case?
I mean, supervised by Hannah and Wes. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think your daughter deserves you clean?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you think that you failed your daughter by leaving rehab in 4 days?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
I mean, I really don't have a reason why. I mean, I didn't really see. I mean, I took on the help for the drug part on my own choice. I tried to learn what I could about everything, but I felt like our last case had nothing to do with drugs. So, you know, I'm just kind of just learning as I go. You know.
Why do you think your last case closed?
Because the judge seen it fit. I mean, for Hannah and Wes to supervise over everything, and it left the choice in their hands. So.
And do you think they made a good choice by letting you come back into the home?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you at all worried that your children have been exposed to methamphetamines?
No, ma'am. I don't think they have been exposed to methamphetamine.
So you wouldn't be worried that this court ordered them to be drug tested?
No, I mean, I wouldn't be worried at all.
Your Honor, I pass the witness.
All right. Ms. Sapien?
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Adcock, in the last 2 months, how many drug tests did you provide to Miss Mason?
Just one, ma'am.
Okay. And that's the one you took before she let you back into the home?
It was, well, she let me back into the home, and then she suspected I was using marijuana again, so she drug tested me.
Okay. And were you positive for THC, do you know?
She kind of just kept that in between her and her dad, so, but I kind of figured once I had to move out, so.
Okay. How long were you out of the house? So you moved, let me strike that. You moved into the home, took a drug test, correct?
Not right off the back until she had suspected that I was stoned off of marijuana, so.
I understand. You took a drug test and then you were asked to leave?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How long were you gone before you went back into the home?
I really don't know, ma'am. I mean, I did probably maybe like a week and a half. I'm not too sure, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And you, in testifying with Ms. Ferguson, you talked about over-the-counter vape pens. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so is that just something you can buy at a tobacco shop?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You weren't going to a dealer on the corner of the street?
No, ma'am.
Okay, it was in a facility, in a store?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I'm guessing it was a Delta product that is
Yes,
legal in Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to leading.
Sustained.
He's not my witness.
He's not in opposition to her position either, Your Honor.
Yeah, I would agree.
Mr. Adcock, have you ever in the last 2 months observed any of your children to have a diaper rash that bleeds?
No, I've never seen them with a diaper rash that bleeds. No, ma'am.
In the last 2 months, have you used methamphetamines?
No, ma'am.
Have you observed Miss Mason use methamphetamines?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
All right, Ms. Perfect.
Thank you. Andrew, now, you worked a family-based services case, and is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was that case over, when was that case over with, to your understanding?
I think,
Best guess.
3 months ago. I mean, I don't know,
April?
sir.
Would April sound right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, since then, have you used methamphetamines?
No, sir.
Are you currently using methamphetamines?
No, sir.
If you took a drug test today, would you pass that drug test?
Yes, sir.
Now, you stated you bought, you tested positive for THC. Did you testify to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who asked you to do that drug test?
My girlfriend, Anna Mason.
Okay. And did you comply?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you know where you purchased the Delta product?
Yes, sir.
Where?
Allsops.
Okay. So was that a Delta 8 product?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You didn't go over to New Mexico or Colorado or the street corner to purchase an illegal substance?
No, sir.
Okay. How have you been around your children since the family-based case was dismissed?
We've been having fun, just swimming.
I didn't ask you what you did with your kids. I asked, have you been around the kids? Please listen to the question that's asked, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, I may get into that, but first of all, have you been around the children?
Yes, sir.
How often do you get to see the children?
As far as now goes, they're supposed to schedule it every Thursday. So,
have you been exercising your possession, access, or visitation, however you want to term it?
Yes, sir. I've had one visit.
Okay. You've had one visit. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you been alone with the children?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, there was some talk about where did those visits occur?
At Betty Brinsfield's house, at Wesley Mason's mom.
Okay. Now, there was some discussion about video games. Do you recall that, or Fortnite?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When did that occur?
That was after our case was closed because we had bought us a PS5. So.
Okay.
Sir.
And where did that occur?
That was at our home.
Okay. All right. Now, have you in any way, shape, or form physically harmed or abused your children?
No, sir.
Have you had your children around, or have you used any type of illegal narcotic around your children?
No, sir.
Do you know of anyone who has been around your children that has used an illegal narcotic?
No, sir.
And for clarity of the record, Judge, I'm referring to since the family-based services case was dismissed, just for the purposes of the record.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, have you noticed any injuries on your children?
No, sir.
Now, let's talk about, when did the department come to ask you to drug test, or somebody from CPS come to ask you to drug test?
This had to be at least 3 weeks ago.
Okay. And had your family-based services case been dismissed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were there any other pending litigation matters having anything to do with CPS at that time?
No, sir.
Did you feel that you were under any obligation to any time CPS decides to show up at your door and ask you to perform services? Do you think you're under a legal obligation to do that?
What do you mean by that, sir?
Well, were there any cases going on?
No, sir.
Okay. So you refused to take a drug test?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that because you would have failed that drug test?
No, sir. It's just I felt we had already completed what we needed to complete.
Okay. All right. Had you taken a drug test, would you have passed?
Yes, sir.
Objection, speculation.
Well, if he knows he wasn't using drugs, he knows he wouldn't pass. So it's not speculation. I'm asking what he knows.
He denies using, but so I would assume that would be his answer. So I'm going to allow it to stand.
Okay. Now, in regards to this case here, do you know if the children were removed from where they were living?
Yes, sir.
Where were they living?
Well, when they were moved from here, they were living at Granny.
You're muted. Where were they living? You muted yourself.
Oh, they were living here, and then they got moved out of here and moved to Betty Brinsfield's.
Okay.
So
when you say here, when you say here, where are you referring to?
Our residence, mine and my girlfriend's residence.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Sorry.
And who removed the children?
CPS.
And where did they place the children?
They placed them at Betty Brinsfield's, and then from there they placed them to foster care. So,
do you know why why did they remove the children and place them in foster care? Do you know why?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, you've indicated that you would be willing to undergo counseling and you would be willing to, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You would be willing to do any type of drug, I'm going to call it rehab, treatment, whatever you want to call it, counseling. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You've also stated that you didn't feel you needed that. Do you recall that answer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you see how that seems to contradict itself?
Just a little bit. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you provide an explanation as to what you're trying to say?
I was just trying to say, is in other words, that we closed this last case. We got this last case closed. We completed all our parent classes and everything. So that was my only reason for that. And I feel like I'm a much better and healthier person in my mind frame and much better parent. So,
do you feel you've kicked your methamphetamine problem?
Yes, sir.
Now, we've talked about methamphetamines. Are you using any other type of illegal narcotics?
No, sir.
Okay. So if you were to would you voluntarily drug test today?
Yes, sir.
Without a court order?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you asking that your children be returned from foster care today?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe it's in their best interest to be returned from foster care today?
Yes, sir.
Why do you believe that?
Because they need their parents. They need us, and we need them just as much. We're a family. So,
are you putting your children in any danger at this particular time?
No, sir.
Are you neglecting the children?
No, sir.
Are you feeding the children?
Yes, sir.
Are you providing shelter for the children?
Yes, sir.
Are you providing suitable living conditions for the children?
Yes, sir.
Do they have clothing?
They have clothing, beds, everything, sir.
Okay. Now, in regards to employment, right now you're mowing lawns. Have you also applied for a more lucrative job position?
Yes, sir. Supposed to be working construction with my friend Tony Sumner. He got me a job with this guy named Gil here in town.
And what type of job would that be?
Concrete. We lay concrete ground.
Do you have that job? Do you have it? Is it supposed to start?
Whenever I'm ready to start. Figured as soon as I'm.
Okay. Are you ready to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So you have another job?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have transportation?
Yes, sir.
what type of transportation do you have?
I have a truck, but if it comes to work, then he comes and picks me up. My friend comes picks me up and we go to work.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any problem with you getting to work.
No, sir.
As far as if the children were with you or anything like that, and they needed a healthcare emergency or anything like that, are you able to provide that for your children?
Yes, sir.
Are your children on any type of specific medications or have any specific healthcare needs?
Other than being allergic to some of the fruits, that's about it. Yes, sir.
Well, let's talk about that. Who's allergic to what fruit?
I know Jonathan, he's allergic to the apple juice. And my daughter, I think she's allergic to bananas.
Okay.
And as far as my two boys, they hardly have any allergies other than.
Okay. Do you know of anything in your home that would be a danger to the children?
No, sir.
Okay. You don't have any firearms laying around or toxic chemicals or anything like that laying around, do you?
Sir.
Okay. Do you have any pets or anything like that at home?
Yes, sir. We got 2 dogs.
And what type of dogs are they?
Chihuahua, and we barely just got a little lab. I think it's a lab.
How do the children like those dogs?
Oh, they love them.
Do you know if anyone in your home was doing anything that would be dangerous to the children?
No, sir.
If that occurred, what steps would you take to protect your children?
I would tell them they'd have to leave and they'd have to get out the house and they wouldn't be allowed around unless they were safe for my kids. And if that didn't work, then I'd have to call the authorities or somebody.
Okay. Now let's talk about these posts on Facebook. Did you make some posts on Facebook Live?
On the What's on Your Mind? Yes, sir.
Okay. And when approximately was that done?
I wouldn't even know. I post a lot, so you know.
Okay. Okay. Were your children in those videos?
Just the ones where we're playing outside.
Let's limit. Okay, I understand people post on Facebook all the time about all sorts of crap.
Yes,
so let's focus on what the Miss Ferguson was asking you about. Okay.
Okay.
That video specifically. Okay.
Yes,
do you recall when you posted that video?
No, sir.
Okay. Was it before or after the family-based services case?
It was way after.
Okay. And did you have the children involved in that video?
No, sir.
Have the children even seen that video?
No, sir.
Do you think you have a First Amendment right to post content on Facebook?
Yes, sir. Freedom of speech.
Now, did that video have anything to do with how you take care of your children?
No, sir.
Do you think that video in any way, shape, or form harmed your children?
No, sir.
Would you post videos and show it to your children that you thought were harmful?
No, I wouldn't, sir. But they don't even get on Facebook, so.
Okay. Do you think you have the right to have an opinion about CPS?
Yes, sir. We all have a right to have an opinion.
Okay. Did you make any threats or threaten anybody in that video?
No, sir.
Now, let's talk about your mental health for a second. Do you feel suicidal?
No, sir.
Do you feel like harming yourself or others?
No, sir.
Do you feel like do you feel like you're depressed?
Just losing my kids is about the only thing that is hurting right now.
Do you suffer from any anxiety or have you been diagnosed with any type of specific mental illness?
No, sir. Just when I was way younger. I mean, that's, kid. So.
In the past 10 years, have you been diagnosed with any specific mental illness?
No, sir.
Are you currently on any medications to treat any type of, I'm going to refer to it as mental illness, anxiety, depression, anything like that?
No, sir.
Has any doctor recommended or any health organization recommended you take said medications?
No, sir.
I'll pass the witness.
Mrs. Kincaid?
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you know Andrew Benson?
Is that for me? The question for me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where he is located?
No, ma'am.
When is the last time that you interacted with Mr. Benson?
Had been maybe a year or more ago.
Okay. Do you have the ability to contact Mr. Benson?
Well, no, ma'am.
Not even via social media or any other way?
I mean, he's on my Facebook. I'd have to look, ma'am. I don't think he is.
Okay. If he is, can you provide that contact information to your attorney?
If he is on my page, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what city was he last living in when you had contact with him?
I think it was this other time was on CPS case. I think it was in Vernon when we was taking the boys to visit their dad. So
Vernon, Texas or Oklahoma?
Vernon. No, I think it was Vernon or Wichita. It was meeting them in
Okay,
Vernon.
so in Texas or Oklahoma?
Texas, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Okay, and Ms. Grant.
Thank you, Judge. Sir, could you help me with a timeline a little bit? After the Texas Family First case was closed, were you still is that the time that you took the one drug test for Miss Mason?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
You testified you took one drug test for Miss Mason. Was that after the last case closed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you moved in and then she started suspecting something and you took a drug screen, correct?
Yes, ma'am. One from the Dollar General.
Okay, so that was my next question. Where did you purchase the drug screen?
Was it?
Yeah, where were you drug tested?
Well, she purchased it from the Dollar General, and I was drug tested here at the house.
Okay, so it was a UA, is that correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Has Miss Mason requested any other type of test other than a UA, such as a hair follicle test, since the last case closed?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And then you said after the results of that test that day, you were asked to move out again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then you said you testified you'd only ever taken one drug test. So is it your testimony she let you move back in the house after having concerns enough that you needed to leave without testing you again?
No, I was getting to visit them, maybe stay a weekend or so as long as she was around and stuff. So she took the precautions to make sure that I didn't stay back at the house.
Okay, but my point is you were allowed back in the home without retesting and being asked to provide a clean test, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And to this date, since you were asked to move out after that drug test that gave her concern, she's not asked you to provide another test?
No, ma'am. CPS had everything kind of already happened pretty quick. So.
Okay, and you were refusing to test for CPS because there was not an open case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but there was an open investigation. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
And you chose not to test as part of the investigation procedure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you were asked to move out this last time, where were you living?
I stayed over there at my mom's for a little bit.
Okay, and how long did you stay there?
Maybe at least 2 weeks or so, I think. I don't know, ma'am, exactly the amount of time.
Okay. Was there an amount of time that you were living in your car?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have, if the children were allowed to be back in the home with Miss Mason at some point, are you willing to remove yourself from the home?
If I have to, yes, ma'am. If it's
okay. Where would you be able to stay if the judge were to decide today that all of you residing in the home wasn't the best plan?
I would stay with the friend that I'm working with, the one that I'm doing the weed eating and mowing with, so that way I can stay at work.
Okay. Do you agree that it's a concern for any person to be around your children while using methamphetamine?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you agree that any person testing positive for methamphetamine during this case should not be a caregiver to your children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have any concerns that your friend that you're going to ride with, what is your friend's name?
Adrian.
Okay. And who is the friend that's going to take you to work at the concrete job?
Okay, that's my, he's actually married to my cousin. His name's Tony Sumner.
Okay. And that's who you'd be riding with to the concrete job, correct?
Yes, ma'am. He lives in Roaring Springs, so I'd be staying over there with him if I had to.
Okay. Sir, do you know if Hannah Mason's working right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Who would you be proposing to be a caregiver for your children while both of you were working?
While both of us were working, I would maybe my mother, my sister. I don't really know. That would be up to her.
Okay. During a CPS, if you're asked to provide names of family who would be able to care for your children, who would be people that you would consider able to be suggested from your standpoint?
My sister, Maria Garcia, my brother, Gabriel Garcia, and my mother.
Okay. Do all of those people reside together?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How old is your sister?
My sister is 27.
Okay. Does she have children? Does she have children as well, sir?
Yes, ma'am. She has 4 kids. Yes, ma'am. And
4 kids.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would it be hard for her to be able to house 4 of her own and 4 of yours if that came to it?
No, ma'am. She just,
Okay.
and she also too said she would get back with me on everything, just to let me know. I just got to keep in touch with her is all. So.
Okay, she's someone you're considering though, correct? If it comes to that. Okay. All right. Thank you. Do you? When do you start the concrete job?
It's just whenever I'm ready to start. I was thinking about starting sometime this next week after I got everything out the way. I was trying to get court and everything, so I wouldn't have to miss work or anything.
Okay. So whatever happens today, you're ready to start soon thereafter.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where does Hannah work?
She works at Allsups, and she was doing home health for Betty Brinsfield, but.
Okay, but Betty Brinsfield, that's
where the kids were staying.
That is right. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm getting all these people confused. I apologize.
Sorry.
And sir, I can't see the top of your head. Is your hair long enough today to take a hair strand test from? I mean, I don't know how much they take, but do you believe that you'd be able to submit today?
It's kind of short, but I mean, if I have to, yes, ma'am, I will.
Okay. Is your hair always that short, or have you recently cut it?
I've always had fade. I mean, there's probably one point in time I had long hair, but.
Okay. But that's your normal, correct?
It's kind of hard to have in the heat.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. So, understanding that, you may not be able to get it off of your head, you're still willing to submit today, right? And I think today or tomorrow, I want to ask the question, are you available tomorrow as well, sir? Because it's getting kind of late in the day today.
Yes, ma'am. I should be available. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you and Hannah share a vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Okay, she has her own and you have your truck?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The fact that you had said something about services, and I think your attorney hit on this, but I want to clarify one thing. Okay. You understand that when you work services, it's not just to say you completed it. We want you to learn from it. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so by leaving the drug rehab after only 4 days, when you started kind of getting homesick for your children, you understand that service is not considered complete?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The Allsups that you got the vape from that you were describing, is that from the Allsups that Hannah works at?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you understand those products can get you in trouble on drug screens, and that it's just better to stay away from them in situations like this. Do you understand that now?
Yes, ma'am. I sure do.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
I don't know if you said anything, Judge, but you're muted.
I'm very sorry. I said yes, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I thought maybe I'd cut out. I was sitting here going, maybe that was me.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Adcock, in the videos that you posted, did you deny using drugs?
What do you mean in the videos I posted?
Well, let me rephrase that. Isn't it true that the only thing you denied when you posted those videos is that you sold drugs?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. This question's vague, ambiguous, and I don't even know what she's asking. I'm going to object to the form of the question. And she's not referring to any specific video. She's posting any video he's ever posted. So I'd like a frame of reference for and I'm going to object to facts not in evidence.
All right, I'm going to allow her to rephrase her question.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Adcock, we talked about a video that you posted live to Facebook. Do you recall when you were in the back seat of your car or some car posting a video? Okay, well, when I asked you earlier if you posted a video, you admitted that you had. Is that correct?
I mean, I post videos. That's Facebook. I mean.
Okay. If there was a video where you were denying that you sold drugs, would you have any reason to argue with that?
I mean, maybe because gossip around town. I mean, I don't know, just kind of just defending myself, just feeling like, I mean, that's usually what Facebook's for, you know, when nobody else there to listen. I mean, you kind of just vent what you're feeling and how you feel about things. I didn't want any talk being about me. I mean, I don't know, ma'am. I mean, I don't know exactly which video it is you're talking about. So,
well, has anybody ever accused you of selling drugs?
my whole life. I mean, you know, my whole life. So I've kind of been to that even in school. I mean, you know, it's kind of just something that I went through my whole life. I mean, so.
Are you concerned about that being out there when your children get older?
Concerned about what being out there?
Videos posted to Facebook where you're talking about, you know, I don't sell drugs.
I mean,
I'm going to object.
Action relevance.
Your Honor. I'm going to object. This line of questioning is not relevant. Has nothing to do with removal of these children.
All right. I'll sustain and we can move on.
Mr. Adcock, given the fact that you're about to start a concrete job, will you be able to pay child support and medical support if this court orders continued managing conservatorship for the department?
If it's needed, yes, ma'am. Anything for my children.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I pass the witness.
Okay, Ms. Sapien, do you have any further questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Barfield, any further questions?
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, and Ms. Kincaid?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Grant?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, Ms. Ferguson, you can call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, I call Hannah Mason. How old are they?
They're 5, 4, 3, and 1.
You've heard Mr. Adcock testify. Well, first of all, let me ask you, who's the father of Levi and Maddox?
Andrew Benson.
And when was the last time you had contact with him?
The last time that I had contact with him was back in, I would say 2021, going into 2022.
And where did you believe that he lived at that time?
He lived in Wichita Falls, and then he moved to Abilene, Texas.
And does he have visitation with any of the children?
No, ma'am. After he was in Abilene, he didn't contact anymore. There was one point that he wanted to give up his parental rights, and that was the last time that I had talked to him.
And that was in 2021?
I believe so. Yeah.
Has he ever been ordered to pay child support?
Yes, ma'am. The last time that he had paid child support was in August of 2021, and that was the last time that he had helped.
And so since August of 2021, you haven't received any child support from him?
Ms. Ferguson, can you all hang on just real quick?
Yes.
My apologies. I'm sorry. We're just in a little bit of chaos in Potter County right now because we just made the move from one courthouse to the other. So it's just, anyway, my apologies for the interruption. Okay. You can go ahead, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I forgot where I was. Hold on 1 second.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Faison, why did the department first become involved in your family's life?
Last year. Sorry.
Yeah, any time. How long has the department been involved in your family's life?
The department has been involved in our life for since 2021.
Okay, so what happened in 2021?
2021, like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to think back that far. They got involved from, like, how do I explain it? They got involved because someone had said that we were for drug usage and for basically neglect and I think child abuse. I can't remember that far. I know it was drug use. but that was what I can remember.
And at that time, what were the drugs of concern?
The drugs of concern were marijuana and I think methamphetamine.
And what happened in that case?
That case, it was on a family-based plan. After they got results back, they had got put us on a family-based plan to where we'll be monitored. I think it was like a safety monitor. I think that's how it was.
Well, is that what happened last August?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh.
So you've had 2 family-based safety services cases.
I don't know. I think my last one was off of the TFF, which I understood I was a Texas Family First.
Okay.
And then they put us on I guess a family-based plan, but they said it was more intense, more in-home, just to make sure that the kids protect them from going into foster care.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back to 2021. So where were you living in 2021?
I was living here.
In Motley County?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was in your home at that time?
Us. It was Andrew Adcock, myself, and our 3 kids at the time.
And so Jonathan hadn't been born yet?
No, ma'am.
And so you said that you worked some services. What services did you work at that time?
Yes, ma'am. I did work services. It was parenting classes and that's go back up far. It was parenting classes. We did I'm remembering now. Okay. It was parenting classes. Then we did OSAR, I believe that's what it's called. We did take drug counseling over the phone. We also took I think individual counseling. I don't think we took couples counseling. But yes, ma'am, that's all I can remember.
Do you remember who your individual counselor was at that time?
I don't. It was a lady.
Okay. Okay. So fast forward to last August,
yes, ma'am.
2023. Did the department become involved in your life again?
Yes, they did.
And you had described the Texas Family First program as like an alternative to the removal of your children. Would you say that's fair?
In a way, yes.
And did they provide you more intensive services than the case that you worked before?
Yes, ma'am, they did. They had us go. They had St. Francis came in and she worked service went with her for 2 days a week. She came in home. And we went through her. And then we also took parenting classes. And we also took individual counseling. We took couples counseling. And we took parenting counseling. Parenting classes.
So who was your individual counselor then?
The individual counselor that we had, his name was Gatlin.
Okay. And did Andrew complete his services?
Yes, ma'am. We both did.
Is it your testimony that do you remember being in, okay, let me change that. Do you remember being in court in March of this year?
I did.
And do you remember being informed that Mr. Adcock had not finished his services?
I didn't. I know he didn't finish drug count, going into rehab, but I know we finished our counseling.
Okay. Do you understand that there was a concern about his drug use?
Gia had set us down and talked to us, and she said, well, this is what she laid the plan out, and she put it into
non-responsive.
Sustained. Okay, listen carefully to her question.
Do you recall being told that you would need to be the one to protect your children from Mr. Adcock?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall being told that he was not in a position to be unsupervised with your children?
No, ma'am.
Do you recall being told in court that he was still using and not wanting to go to rehab?
I know he was wanting, what you're trying to ask me.
Well, Okay, let's address this differently. At one point, when did you let him move back in with your kids after that case closed?
I let him move back in a couple of weeks after the case was closed because she had told me, don't directly, have him move back in, just right off the bat, because he's going to have time to get clean. So my dad was monitoring him at the time, and my dad made the call like, hey, he's showing signs that he's getting clean. So I agreed upon it, and I let him move back in, and he had stayed, he was going on the mends of looking and it's like staying clean.
Okay, let me ask you, what were the signs that he was showing that he was clean?
The signs of him showing was being clean is he was gaining weight. His mind was not like elsewhere. He was about the children, and just him just being his normal self that I'd fallen in love with at the beginning that I met him.
So why didn't you ask him to take a drug test to determine if he was clean before he moved in?
Do you mind repeating that?
Why didn't you ask him to take a drug test so that you could determine if he was clean before he moved in with your children?
Because I had known that I was, since I've been with him this long enough that I know the signs of him being clean and also being not clean. So I took upon myself like, okay, well, he's getting clean, and I and myself knew that I shouldn't have to give him a drug test, but I failed in that part of not giving him one.
So let me ask you this. You said that when he's clean, his mind is not elsewhere. What types of things does he talk about or say that makes you think his mind is elsewhere when he's using drugs?
Just wanting to leave most of the time, wanting to be around friends, his old friends, not wanting to be involved in the family, just different aspects.
Do you recall being told at the end of the last case that it would be your responsibility whether or not you let him into the house and if he was using, that could have consequences for you?
Objection, compound.
Sustain. Break it up.
Do you recall being told at the end of the last case that it was being closed because Mr. Adcock was not cooperating?
No, ma'am, about not cooperating. It was just basically it'll be a family decision of whether you let Mr. Adcock back in the home with his children. That was up to Mr. West's and my decision, what I understood.
Okay, so your father's name is Wesley Mason, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever had concerns that he's using methamphetamines?
No, ma'am.
Were you recently told that he took a drug test?
Yes, me and him both went and took a drug test.
And have you been told that he can't supervise your children at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your understanding of why he can't supervise your children?
I don't know.
If you were told that he was positive for methamphetamines, would you have concerns that he's been basically the caregiver for your children?
I don't think so. Do you mind repeating that?
If you were told that he was positive for methamphetamines and that's why he can't supervise your children, would you be concerned that he has basically been the supervisor or the caregiver for your children for the past year?
That's a shock to me that he potentially tested positive, and I had no clue.
Well, let me ask you this. Didn't you tell the department that Larissa Mason was using methamphetamines?
Yes, I did.
And who is Larissa?
She's my stepmom.
And at some point, did your dad ask her to move out of the home?
Yes.
And when did that happen?
I can't recall.
Did that happen during the Texas Family First case that you had previously?
Yes.
But isn't it true that she was back in that home as recent as last week?
I don't know.
So having said all of that, how do you protect your children from being around people using that?
Tell them to leave. Like, this is where I gained like my voice is through TFF. I learned how to use my voice. Is to tell them to leave. Like, I have the right to tell them to like leave my house. I told my stepmom to leave the house, and I've told my significant other to leave, and now I'm gonna have to tell my dad.
So when you say that you know how to identify somebody using, would you agree with me that the best way to identify somebody using drugs is to ask them to take a drug test?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you concerned that your children may have been exposed to methamphetamines when they were in 2 households where people were using?
No, ma'am, I had no concerns. But if I'm not there with them, like, how can I know?
Okay. So you work at Allsteps. What's your schedule?
My schedule now is it kind of varies because we go by what the with what our boss puts us on, but it's normally full time.
Okay, so what hours do you typically work during the week?
Oh, I typically work in the afternoon.
Okay, like from when to when?
Normally 2 to 10.
So who watches your children when you were at work?
While I was at work, it was either my friend across the street, my dad, or Andrew.
And in fact, when you work till 10 p.m., somebody else is putting the children to bed.
Yes, ma'am.
And getting them dinner.
Yes, ma'am.
Until this case, the investigation for this case started, Andrew lived in the home with you. Is that correct?
He did for a couple weeks.
And a couple of weeks, was that like the month of May?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I'm bad about dates.
What was it that made you ask Andrew to take a drug test?
He just started showing signs of being under the influence.
And what were those signs?
He had like puffy eyes, just giggly, and then some like he was calm. You know, we say chill, but yes, ma'am.
Why didn't you ask him to take a drug test before you let him come back?
Because me and my dad decided on it. My dad, well, he spent most of his time with my dad, and my dad came to me and told me, like, I think, you know, I see Andrew on the mends of getting clean, and so I agreed upon it, and I let him back. And
when the department came to talk to you 3 weeks ago because of this investigation, did you refuse to take a drug test?
No, ma'am.
Well, isn't it true that you did until the department got temporary managing conservator of your children?
I stayed quiet when that lady was at my house. Andrew was the one that mainly talked. But when they came in with getting temporary removed from him, I had went and took a voluntary UA, and then I told him that I will voluntarily go take a hair follicle.
And you did that?
Yes, ma'am. And when I went to go take a UA, I had the PA, children's PA at the time, to show them that I had a clean UA.
But do you understand that drug tests are different, and sometimes the department asks for a forensic drug test?
No, ma'am, I didn't know at the time until she told me.
Okay, so nobody explained that to you when talking to you about letting Andrew come back into the home?
No, ma'am.
And you were negative, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Would you want the court to order Mr. Adcock to take a drug test so that you could know if he's using around your children?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you also concerned that your children may have been exposed?
No, ma'am.
Well, would you be opposed if the court ordered your children to take a drug test?
I will not be opposed.
But it's not something that you think they need?
No, ma'am.
Have you talked to your children's pediatrician about what it looks like for children to be exposed to drugs?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
And what were you looking for?
Looking for either they're sleepy or they're hyperactive or they're like, that's all I can think. Either they're sleepy or hyperactive.
And you're not concerned at all that your children may have been exposed?
No, ma'am.
Do you understand why the department was concerned when you were asked to take a drug test and you refused?
No, I never refused. I just never said anything to them. They just told me that I looked like I was agreeing to what Andrew Adcock had said.
So you said that you found your voice. What is it that you would want to see happen with your kids today?
I like to let my kids know that they're loved and that I'm here to protect them. Just know that I'm here for them, and I will do anything to have them back.
And what do you think that it is that would help you be able to protect them in the future?
Or help protect them from the future, like in the future, is to not have them be around usage.
And isn't that what you worked on in the last TFF case?
Yes. Well, last TFF case was like learning how to use my voice, learning how to have confidence in myself, learning how to become like a mother to my children, and learning how to potty train my daughter. And yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned that Andrew worked those services too. Did he go to services with you?
Yes. When she came into the home, she worked with us both.
Okay. What about outside of the home?
What do you mean by outside the home?
Like individual counseling and couples counseling?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we did separate individual.
And so how many couples sessions did you have?
We had, I think, 3.
And did you talk at all in those sessions about how to confront Andrew about using drugs?
Not in couples counseling, but in drug counseling, yes, because we both took drug counseling together.
Okay.
Couples counseling was more as us as a couple and what we can do to work together and whatnot.
Okay. But you did take classes where you talked about how drug use impacts children?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me go back to Mr. Benson. So you said that the last contact you had with him was in 2021. Is that still correct?
I'll say 2022 because that case did last until, the next year, and then it got closed out. And we were still continuing to have visitation, even though he stopped paying child support in August of 2021.
So when was the last time he saw the children?
The last time he saw the children was in, I'll say, March of 2022, I believe. I think.
And that's the last you knew of where he lived was in Wichita Falls?
Last time I knew where he was at, he was in Abilene.
Abilene. Okay, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, do you have any way to reach him?
I do not.
How much do you make per hour?
I make $10 an hour. So
And do you work on average how many hours a week?
36 to 38.
And if this court so ordered, would you be willing to pay child support and medical support for your children?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I pass the witness.
Ms. Sippy?
Thank you, Judge. Miss Mason, do any of your children attend school when it's not summer?
Yes.
Okay. How many of them are in school?
2.
And who takes them to school?
I do.
Are you always the one to take them to school?
Yes.
And were they still in school after your TFF case closed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did your kids have any issues with attendance?
No, ma'am.
Did you have any trouble getting your kiddos cleaned for school?
No, I didn't have no trouble.
Okay. Did you have any trouble making sure they were fed for lunch?
Yes.
You did have trouble, or you did not have trouble making sure they had food?
I didn't have trouble.
Okay. And in the evening, were you providing dinner for your kids?
Yes.
And if you were working, who would cook for your children?
At the time, it'll be either my friend or Andrew.
And since your TFF case has closed, have had working utilities in your home?
Yes, ma'am.
At one point, I think you had a little problem with water. Is that correct?
We didn't have problem. Well, because the water line busted, and so we had to go in and redo the water lines.
Okay. Is your water line fixed?
Yes, it is.
And it looks like your lights are on. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Miss Mason, do you recall when your TFF case was closed, the month?
The month of probably it's at the end of March or into April.
Okay. And that was March of 2024?
Yes.
Okay. What was your understanding of the contact that Mr. Adcock could have with the kiddos after that case was closed?
The contact would be between Mr. Mason and I's decision whether to let him back in the home or not, but he was scheduled to be supervised.
Okay.
With the kids.
And was that up to your discretion, so for you to decide?
It was up to my dad and I's decision.
And I know we've all talked a lot about the drug test that you asked Andrew to take. You've heard that testimony and given that testimony. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. To be clear, he has only taken one drug test with you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did that drug test have the ability to test for methamphetamine?
No, it is tested for marijuana.
Okay. And you got that from the dollar store?
Yes, ma'am. The dollar store does have multi-drug use now. I could use that one. But I just recently found out that they do drug testing here. Well, UA drug testing here. Like, I found that out like recently. It's, okay. I guess it's like a 12-panel one.
When you say they do it here, where is that?
At the clinic here.
Okay.
In Matador.
And you think utilizing that could assist you in being protective of your children?
Yes, ma'am. Now that I know.
Now that you know it's available?
Yes.
Miss Ferguson asked you in the future what you would do to better help your children, and you said that you would be more protective. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like you have not been protective of your children recently?
I feel like I have. I mean, I slacked off in the beginning because I felt bad. Like, I felt for Andrew. I mean, but now, yes.
What do you mean by you slacked off?
Like in the beginning, because I didn't give him a drug test when I should have before he moved back in and not after.
Did you have a court order to give him a drug test before he could move in?
No, ma'am. Our caseworker just said that if you ever feel like a suspicion, you can go get and you can go over the counter and get one.
Okay, and that's what you did?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how long have you and Andrew been in a relationship?
We've been together for 3 years, going on 4.
And you testified earlier that you can tell when he's relapsing. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say he's relapsing, are you talking about methamphetamine?
Not necessarily just a methamphetamine. It could be any kind of drug. Knowing nowadays, it could be like marijuana, it could be methamphetamine, it could be whatever else.
Aside from the one time you had him test, have you noticed any of those signs in Andrew?
No, ma'am.
When CPS approached you for this newest case that we're here on today, Ms. Ferguson alleged that you refused to drug screen. Do you recall that?
I do not.
Do you recall her questions about you refusing to drug screen?
Yes.
Okay. Did you refuse to drug screen?
No. No.
When CPS approached you at your home, what did you do?
I stayed quiet. I didn't say anything.
And why did you choose to stay quiet?
Because Mr. Adcock was talking at the time.
Were you made aware of the allegations against you at that time?
Yes, she had told me the allegation. Well, she told us the allegations.
Ms. Mason, have you used methamphetamine in the last 6 months?
No.
And you did submit to drug screens, correct?
Yes.
And you testified with Ms. Ferguson that those were negative?
No, ma'am. I don't know my test.
Okay.
I missed part. I mean, she cut out a little bit. Would you answer that again, Ms. Mason?
No, ma'am. I have not gotten the results of my hair follicle test.
Do you know the results of your UA screen?
I did not take a UA. I only took a voluntary UA. I only went and took a hair follicle.
Ms. Mason, my question is, do you know the results of the UA that you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
What were the results?
Negative.
And that drug screen, do you know when it was provided?
Yes, ma'am. It was provided on the 7th of this month.
June 2024?
Yes.
And then I think you're also saying you submitted to a hair follicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And you do not know those results yet?
No, ma'am.
Were you also made aware, Ms. Mason, of concerns regarding a rash?
Yes, ma'am.
And did any of your children have a rash on their bottom?
No, ma'am.
Were any of your children bleeding from their bottom?
No, ma'am.
Did you allow CPS to observe your children when they came to your home?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you allow them to meet with your children?
Yes.
Did you allow them to also look at any bottoms or arms or what they needed to see?
Yes, ma'am. We had took our son, Jonathan, outside and let her see his bottom.
So although you remained quiet, you didn't keep them from your kids?
No, I didn't keep them.
Miss Ferguson talked with you about a woman named Larissa. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And who is Larissa to you?
My stepmom.
Okay. You also talked with Miss Ferguson about finding your voice. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And being protective of your kiddos?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you done anything to protect your family from Larissa?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
What have you done?
I have put a no trespassing warrant against her, and also I had filed harassment.
And was that done, Miss Mason, at the same time these allegations were made?
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you feel you needed to protect your family from Larissa?
I feel like she had relapsed on methamphetamine.
And so, is it fair to say the services that you have completed in the past assisted you in protecting your family from Larissa?
Yes, ma'am.
And you did complete all of your services in your TFF case?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Mason, do you feel that your children are in any kind of danger in your care?
No, ma'am.
Do you feel that you have the ability to be protective?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And you testified today that the 2 times you felt people were unsafe, you removed them from your home. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And if the insinuation from Miss Ferguson that your father tested positive for meth is true, that's shocking to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you place your children in your father's home?
No, ma'am. They were placed in my granny's home.
Okay. Who, if anyone, put your children with your father?
I had placed them, well, I asked the CPS investigator if my dad and my granny could be in kinship.
I guess my question, Ms. Mason, is did that decision come from you or the department?
The request came from me.
The decision. Who made the decision?
CPS did.
I'll pass the witness.
Okay, Mr. Barfield?
Thank you. Ma'am, did you observe Andrew or your father or anyone using methamphetamines around your children?
What do you mean by observed?
Did you see anybody smoking drugs or shooting up drugs around your kids?
No.
Okay. Now, you've heard allegations that your father tested, or insinuations, I'll use the word used before. Has he ever given any indication to you that he used drugs?
No, sir.
Okay. And CPS put him in, the kids in his care, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So is CPS a danger to your children?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that.
I'll withdraw the question.
All right.
In regards to your ability to protect your children, were your children, to your knowledge, since this newest investigation began, have they been harmed in any way by any individual?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you observe any behaviors of your children that gave you any concern as to their physical well-being?
No, sir.
How about, did you observe any behaviors as to their mental or psychological well-being?
No.
Okay. Now, when Andrew was around the children, did he do anything to harm the children to your knowledge?
No, sir.
When he was around the children, did he act appropriately around the children?
Yes, sir.
Did he help support and provide for the children?
Yes, sir.
Was there anything about his behaviors that were concerning to you?
Not at the time. No.
Okay. And my understanding is you tested negative for drugs.
I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this question. Have you been using drugs?
No.
Would you test positive for drugs?
No.
Okay. Now, I think you testified that you took a UA and you were negative. Did I hear that wrong?
Yeah. No, sir.
Okay. You just don't know the results of the hair follicle test.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically, you anticipate that to be negative as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I'll pass witness.
Ms. Kincaid?
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you have Mr. Andrew Benson on any of your social media?
No.
Okay, so do you have any way of contacting him?
No.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Grant?
Ms. Mason, during the investigation, were you offered the opportunity for either one or the other of you to leave the home so the children could remain?
With this one?
Yes.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Would that have been an option for you had you been offered that resolution prior to removal of the children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Pass the witness, Judge.
Ms. Ferguson?
Have you answered the phone when the department's called you in the past few days?
Yes, ma'am.
When was the last time you talked to somebody at the department?
I talked to somebody yesterday. Well, it was St. Francis is who I was in touch with.
What about Veronica Nieto? When was the last time you answered her phone calls?
Last time that I answered was the day of the removal of my kids.
So if she was calling to tell you the results of your drug test, would you have known it if you didn't answer the phone?
Repeat the question, please.
Why haven't you answered her phone calls?
Objection, facts, not evidence.
Overruled. I wanted to answer the question.
Like when?
Okay.
Like
Has
here
Veronica
recently?
called you? Who asked you to take a drug test?
When the first time that she showed up?
Yeah, the first time you were asked.
Okay, Veronica. Veronica.
And when was that?
That was, I don't know, I think in May. I'm not sure.
That was at the beginning on your first contact with the department. Is that correct?
Yes.
Where you stayed silent.
Yes, ma'am.
But you were asked to take a drug test. Is that correct?
Yes, she asked.
Okay. What about the second time?
She never asked the second time.
Well, how'd you end up taking a drug test?
I voluntarily said that I would.
Okay. When was that?
That was on June 7th.
And that was the day your children were removed?
Yes, ma'am.
Or that was the day that the sheriffs had to come to your house? Is that correct?
No.
Are you aware that the department had to file a writ of attachment for law enforcement to assist after this court signed an order removing your children?
No, ma'am. I did not know.
And why didn't you know that?
No one said.
Did you answer the door when law enforcement and the department came to your door?
When?
On June 4th.
I think that time, no, ma'am, I did not answer my door. I heard a knock, but I didn't answer it.
Did you see Veronica out there knocking on your door?
No, ma'am.
Did you see law enforcement knocking on your door?
No, ma'am.
So on June 7th, you were served with this lawsuit. Is that correct?
Yes.
And who served you with the lawsuit?
They served me. CPS did. Veronica did, and her assistant or whoever that girl was with her with. And the law enforcement gave me a paper as well.
Okay, so you were served by law enforcement on June 7th.
Yes.
Where were you when you were served with that paperwork?
I was at my granny's house.
Okay. And was that the first time that, since the very first initial contact, that you talked to Veronica?
No, the last time when the contact that I made it by phone, and it was on the 6th. Okay. And she said that she was on her way back to Plainview, and that I was going to take. I told her that I voluntarily took UA to show that I was clean. I was told that that I could.
So was that, because you said earlier it was June 7th, but your children had already been removed on June 5th. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. They were moved on June 7th.
Well, they were physically removed on June 7th, but before that, the department had obtained temporary managing conservatorship. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. No one told me.
But people did attempt to tell you. Is that correct?
No.
Nobody came to your house?
Not that I know of. I was probably out of town that day.
Okay. So when you complained that nobody told you the results of your drug test, is it because nobody tried to contact you?
Objection, Your Honor. That's a misstatement of testimony. She hasn't made a complaint.
I'm also going to object to speculation. If she doesn't, how is she supposed to know who's supposed to talk to her? I mean, again,
I'll sustain. If Ms. Ferguson, you can ask for a different question, or you can rephrase your question.
So when you first talked to the department and offered to go take a UA, did the department ask you to take a hair strand?
No, ma'am.
How did you end up taking a hair strand then?
I told them if I can voluntarily go to take a hair strand with my dad, West Mason.
Okay. But you did talk to the department about taking a hair strand. They had to do the paperwork to pay for your hair strand. Is that correct?
I have no idea. They just said I can go ahead and go and just go up there before 4, and that she'll send over the information.
And when you talk about who made the decision for your father to be a safety monitor for the children, in the last case, you were the one that asked for your father to do that. Is that correct?
In the last case, yes, I asked him if he can be a safety monitor.
And in this case, did you ask that he assist your great-grandmother or your grandmother in caring for the children?
I'm not sure. I can't recall if I did or not.
Well, would it make sense to you that the department asked him to take a drug test because you asked that he be there caring for the children?
And I'm not sure if I asked. If not, but the drug test was based off of an assumption of my dad being on drugs.
And why would the department assume that? Do you know?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Well, did you not have any worries about your dad using drugs?
No, ma'am.
But you've already said that you know that Larissa was using methamphetamines. Is that correct?
Objection. Ask and answer, Judge.
Sustained.
In any of the services as you worked before, did you talk about the fact that when people are around other people who are using drugs, that they're more likely to be using themselves?
No, ma'am.
You've never heard that, felons can't be around felons?
Objection, relevance.
I'll allow her to answer it, but, we're getting kind of far field.
I'm going to object in that she's assuming felons are all using drugs. I'm going to object to the former.
Okay, Your Honor, I withdraw that question. I will ask it differently. Ms. Mason, if your dad was living with somebody who you knew was using methamphetamines, you had zero concerns that he was also using?
Yes, ma'am. I had zero concerns.
Your Honor, I pass the witness.
Okay. Ms. Sapien?
Thank you, Judge. I'll be brief, Ms. Mason. I just want to touch on your cell phone. Have you been having any issues with your cellular device?
I have.
Okay. In fact, you and I have had trouble connecting.
Yes.
Okay. And why? Do you know what was happening when I was calling you?
I have no clue. My service has been off and on these past weeks.
Okay.
I think the stars were down.
Did you get any voicemails from me?
I've gotten one.
Okay. And I let you know I left multiple.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Okay. Ms. Warfield?
Ms. Mason, to your knowledge, since this new case began, has anyone other than, are you aware of anyone who's tested positive for drugs, meaning specifically yourself or Mr. Adcock specifically have tested positive for methamphetamine to bring us here today, to your knowledge?
No, sir.
Ask the witness.
Ms. Kincaid?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, and Ms. Grant, any further questions?
No additional questions, Judge. Do we have time for the attorneys to go into about a 5 minute or less breakout room between witnesses, Judge?
Yes. So let's see where we are with Ms. Mason. Oh, so Ms. Ferguson's back to you. Further questions of her?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Mason?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, then I'll put you all in a quick breakout room. I'm gonna just tell you all I've got an appointment that I need to be at a little bit after probably 4:15, 4:30 at the latest. So just kind of give you all a heads up because I don't know how much we have left.
I don't have any witnesses, Judge.
Okay, let me put you guys in the breakout room. I think you guys can all put yourselves back to 2. We had you in there before.
I am excited that I got a new computer set up where I can actually, people can hear me and I don't cut out at my desk.
It does seem different. I didn't know you changed.
Complete new computer, screen, microphone, camera, everything. And I've got my mood lighting on today too.
Well, you look great.
You do. It makes you it makes you look fabulous. You look marvelous.
Oh, wow. You're making me blush.
Your Honor,
sorry,
oh, that's okay. Could I make an oral motion before we continue?
Yes, ma'am.
With the court having something at 4:15 and a couple of other things, I'd like to make a motion to recess this adversary and set it to reconvene. And that comes with agreement of the parties. I hope they can speak for themselves, but I'd like to recommend that during the recess that Mr. Adcock and the children be drug screened prior to reconvening. And I believe they agree to be drug screened, Judge, as part of the investigation.
Okay. Well, that's precisely kind of along the lines that I was thinking about.
Thank you, Judge.
So I would go along with that. Let me just, is that everybody's agreement?
Yes, Your Honor, because especially just if I may, real quick, I think what we're doing is because we do have those 2 unknowns, which are crucial, I think, to the department's case, and they're crucial to the evidence in this case. So I think proceeding at this point would basically be, we're just working with very crucial unknowns here.
I would agree. I'm sorry that, we didn't get there before today. So, Mr. Adcock, you willing to, you telling me you're going to go do this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll agree recess. Let me have Ms. Katie look for a possible date. Looks like she's already doing that. June 25th at 1:30.
Your Honor, the only concern I have, if he has to go it's probably too late today, but he has to go first thing tomorrow to get those results back.
And Judge, I'm in a federal trial the 25th. However, I can find somebody, I'm sure, to stand in for me for this. Mr. Hill, as you know, stood in for me for some other stuff today. So if you need the 25th and we can get those results back in time, I'll make arrangements to have counsel present.
The big concern is if we can get the results back that quickly.
I'll ask Natalie, do you know?
Sorry, I was on mute. It really depends. If the test, if they're clean, as he's saying they're going to be, we should get them back within 2 to 3 days. But if they are positive, it usually does take longer. I would say safely about a week's time if they are going to be positive. And so we are calling it a bit close. If today's Tuesday, we're wanting to reschedule for Tuesday. And that's, again, him going first thing tomorrow guaranteed. So I think that if we schedule it for next Tuesday, we do run the possibility of maybe not having them, but we can always just see then if we would like to still schedule it for next Tuesday.
Ms. Katie, would there be another possible date that's not too far off?
We could potentially do it on the 27th in the afternoon, but your morning is booked.
I'll be out of court by the 27th. I know that for a fact. And if the test,
I have the afternoon of the 27th available. I can do the 27th.
That gives us a couple of days, so. Okay, let's set for the afternoon of the 27th then, and
Do you want to start around 1:30? I don't know how long your morning is going to take. You have a lot going on that morning.
yeah, or even 2 o'clock maybe.
Okay.
that work. I mean, I'm good. 2 o'clock's fine with me, Judge.
Same.
Same.
That's fine.
None of you are in a final with Judge Graham that afternoon.
No, ma'am.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Okay, then we will just recess until that time. Get Mr. Adcock to drug screens, requested care, GA. And same with the children. We will get a hair in children.
Do y'all possibly know what my test results are? Remember?
Your Honor, can I have a breakout room with Hannah and her attorney after this?
Yeah, I'll let you do that instead of doing that here. So, okay. All right, then I'll see everybody back on the 27th at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
You're not muted.
Let me get Ms. Person and Ms. Sapien and her client in the breakout room.
And Hannah, before you go into the breakout room, or Andrew, can you guys repeat what the children were allergic to? Was it Jonathan was allergic to apple juice and Sandra was allergic to bananas? Is that what I heard?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, Sandra is allergic to milk. She's lactose intolerant.
Okay, very good to know. All right, everybody else is free to go.
Thanks.
I'll leave this feed up until I see that you guys have exited the breakout room, and I'll see you back on.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.
Easy.
Have a good day.